What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Nelson Media and welcome to our personality breakdown series where we take a look at different movies, we pick apart the characters and the themes, and talk about some of the different things that they're going through. And today we are taking a look at the movie The Inkwell. The Inkwell has a lot of interesting personalities in it and different themes we can take from their situations. We have six characters we're going to be taking a look at. Drew, played by Lorenz Tate, his dad Kenny, played by Joe Morton, mom Brenda, played by Suzanne Douglas, Lauren, played by Jada Pinkett Smith, Harold, played by Morris Chestnut, and Heather, played by Adrian Joy Johnson. So I'm focusing on these six, although there are more minor characters, because just I think they have more distinct personality characteristics. So I'm going to focus on them. So let's start with Drew. Drew is a 16-year-old boy. He's the only child of Kenny and Brenda. And Drew is a little strange because he has an imaginary friend at the age of 16. Drew is headed over to his aunt and uncle's house with his family to spend a couple of weeks after he accidentally set a fire to his house. So, the family arrives at the aunt and uncle's house where Drew and his cousin Junior, played by Dwayne Martin, they reconnect. And Junior spends some time with Drew doing different things, and he starts to realize that Drew is kind of socially awkward. Like, he doesn't know how to talk to girls, doesn't know how to dance, and he'll get played out by girls, but yet still have the nerve to turn his nose up at the less attractive girls. So Drew sees a girl at the beach, and he's seen her before at a party, and he asks Junior about her, and he learns that she's Lauren Kelly. So Junior lets him know that Lauren is known as being stuck up, she's got an attitude, and she would just end up manipulating him. But of course, Drew doesn't care about that because, when you see a good looking girl, you're like,
oh yeah, manipulate me.
So Drew tries to talk to her, and this is where his social awkwardness gets the best of him. And he talks, and the things that he means as compliments actually get interpreted as insults, and he just ends up making a complete fool out of himself. So you can tell right off the bat, Drew's not good with women. He's not good, in social situations. So now let's look at his parents. So when you look at Drew's relationship with his parents, you notice that there's not really that much communication, especially with his dad. I mean, you look at his dad, who's very much into the culture, cool, Black Panther type, and he has a son who's awkward, has no clue about style or anything. And put on top of that, your son nearly burns the house down. So after the fire happens, Drew's parents, they really don't know how to approach him with what happened. So what do you do when you have a son who you think is depressed and you struggle to communicate with him? You take him to a therapist. In this case, it's a psychiatrist. So Drew ends up going to meet Dr. Wade for a family session, and right off the bat, it's clear that they have family issues. You can see Kenny is embarrassed by his son. You can see mom is more the overprotective type. And you can see that their marriage has its own issues. And their session actually ends up ending without anything productive coming from it. So Drew ends up going to see the psychiatrist again, but this time he goes to see her alone. And this is where we end up learning a little bit more about him. The psychiatrist compliments Drew on his hair to loosen him up and to build that therapeutic alliance. And in the midst of this, she picks up on one of Drew's core feelings or themes. And that's the concept of feeling other than. Almost like that person who feels like the black sheep in the family that no one understands, that type of feeling. So Drew introduces Dr. Wade to his imaginary friend Jago, and she learns that Drew's grandfather made it for him when he was little. And it makes sense that if Drew feels like no one understands him, he'll create an imaginary friend that would. So all of this talk loosened Drew up. He saw that Dr. Wade was trustworthy. So when Dr. Wade asked him about why he started the fire, he opened up and he talked about it. He tells her that it was an experiment that went out of control. He was trying to make rocket fuel. And since that fire, he's actually felt really intense guilt and he's retreated inward, which again explains the imaginary friend. So some of this is actually explained though when you take a look at like a symptom of major depression, and that is feeling worthless or having excessive and inappropriate guilt along with a depressed mood. So Dr. Wade tries to reframe Drew's experience and tells him that people don't appreciate him for who he is, but the real ones will catch up to him. And that's actually some really good advice. A lot of times we get uncomfortable showing our true selves to people, and instead we remake ourselves into the image of what we think people want to see. So we end up having a lot of fake friends because we never believed that if they really knew who we were, they really wouldn't like us. So that ends, and we see Drew and his dad go fishing together and try to bond. He does that traditional thing that fathers do, and they speak to sons about women. And so he's asking Drew about any girls he's talking to. And Kenny gets excited when he finds out his son has some interest in girls, and he tries to use that to connect with him on a deeper level. But the problem is you can still see the disconnect because Drew doesn't really fully understand how his dad talks to him. There's like a block there. Drew decides to ask him a direct sexual related question, and it really surprises Kenny, and he doesn't know how to describe it. So he tries to give Drew a metaphor to kind of talk about the birds and the bees. At first it doesn't really work out well, but eventually Drew finally kind of understands what Dad is talking about, and they have their first real bonding moment. And this is where they actually kind of understand each other. And you see evidence of that because when they're walking home, you actually see that they're having a good conversation. But the conversation ends up getting interrupted because Brenda lets Drew know, that Lauren called, and Drew just rushes off. Now, moving into the relationship kind of stuff, you see Lauren showing an interest in Drew. And for that, watch our personality breakdown of Lauren to understand her thinking and behavior. But Drew gets to Lauren's house and he knocks on the door like a little nut. Like, I kind of understand why she'd be upset opening the door like that. So she answers the door. She's got that stuck up attitude. And Lauren, she actually doesn't like Drew. But she got curious because she saw Drew pull an older, prettier woman, Heather, and she automatically got competitive and started faking interest to get the same treatment as the other woman. Now, again, for the breakdown of Lauren, take a look at the video on it. It should be up soon. So Drew goes on a date with Lauren, and being new to dating, he gets taken advantage of in different ways, just like his cousin Junior warned him about. He ends up paying for a bunch of things. She's making him open doors for her like she's a queen. She even has him doing negative things like stealing lobster. And the fact that they were able to cook that thing out on the beach, to me, that was really impressive. But the key thing for that moment in time is that Lauren actually saw Drew for who he really was, and at that point actually kind of liked him. But the problem is, when you're dealing with toxic people, they're always going to give you toxic results. Talking to Lauren and hearing her negative outlook on life caused Drew to become concerned that his parents were going to end up getting a divorce, and that started causing him anxiety. And later on in the day, you see that he started becoming hyper-focused on hearing his parents arguing. And he starts to think that his family's going to end up like Lauren's family. So you see, as a kid, Drew experienced a lot of issues that kids go through today. You see the depression, you see the anxiety caused by fear of parental divorce. And a lot of times kids will actually internalize that fear and blame themselves for parents breaking up. You end up seeing heartbreak from watching a woman that he really liked stand him up to have sex with her ex. And so he sees this and he runs off alone, and he runs into Heather, who was fresh off ending her marriage after being cheated on. And now you have two broken people using each other as negative coping mechanisms, and they have sex. Now, the crazy thing is he loses his virginity to Heather which is crazy because he's 16 and she's at least 30 something. But anyway, after doing that, he ends up feeling better about himself. And after these experiences, now he has a point of connection with his father, which is still crazy. I mean, the one thing that caused y'all to bond is sex. But anyway, they really never worked out anything substantial as a family, especially about the whole house fire thing. But apparently, after he had sex, things kind of came together for him, and it was a big source of maturation for him. So Drew goes and he pays one last visit to Dr. Wade and thanks her for everything. And so he ends up at a point now where he no longer feels alone or like a black sheep, and that he's let go of the guilt that he's held on to from his past mistakes. And that's a little bit about Drew. I could say he's a typical 16-year-old. He went through a lot of typical 16-year-old problems that happen in families and that happen with relationships. The only thing that I think was truly abnormal was the imaginary friend. But that's all for Drew. Take a look at some of the other videos on the breakdowns that we have of some of the other characters, and I'll see you over there. Let me know what you think also. Do you have a movie that you want me to take a look at some of the characters? Drop it inside the comments section. And again, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.